Now I'm going to remove the wheel. Use a 17mm socket. Take the lug bolts out. When I get to the last one, I'm going to hold the wheel. Take it off. Grab the wheel and slide it off. The axle nut is peened over right here. Just use a punch or a chisel and just get underneath there. You just want to try to bend it back a little bit. Use a 32mm socket. Take the axle nut off. Now we're going to loosen up this ball joint nut. Use an 18mm wrench and loosen that up. Now take the nut off. Now I'm going to separate the ball joint from the knuckle. There is different front end tools that you can use that could press down on the ball joint. We're going to use a pickle fork. Just get underneath here. Give it a tap so that separates, just like that. Now when you're removing the lower ball joint from the knuckle to do the axle, you could go this route instead, take these two nuts off and separate the control arm from the ball joint that way. That might be a little easier for you, but if you want to, you can do it this way as well. This is how you would do this. If the stud is spinning, take an 18mm wrench, put it on the nut, and then take a T30 socket for the stud. You can hold the stud while you move the wrench. In our situation, this is a little too rusty, so we can't do that. With the vehicle lower to the ground, I'm going to support the lower part of the tie rod with a floor jack. That's just going to put pressure on the socket so that when I go to loosen the nut, it won't spin. Might have to go back and forth a little bit. Now with the nut on there loosely, I'm just going to tap the top of the tie rod. You might have to hit it a little harder than that. Then you can take the nut off. You want to separate it from the knuckle. Now you can grab the knuckle, just pull it out of the way, push the axle in. I have to use a hammer. Tap it in a little bit. Just slide the axle out of the knuckle. Now where the axle goes into the transmission, I'll just take a pry bar. If you have a fork, like an axle fork to remove it, you can try to fit it in there, but there's not much room. Just give it a tap. Just try to slide this out. And might want a drain bucket, just so any fluid that comes out. Catch the fluid. And just slide the axle up. And watch your toes. Now we're going to slide the new one in. Get it lined up. If you want, you can use a rubber mallet. Just give it a couple taps on the end.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. That's all the way down. Now slide the axle back in the back of the knuckle through the wheel bearing. Might have to turn the wheel bearing a little or turn the axle. And you can line up the ball joint, the lower ball joint underneath. Now reinstall the tie rod into the knuckle. Take the nut, get that started. And I'm going to use a floor jack. Just go underneath the tie rod. And just press up, put a little bit of pressure on there so the stud doesn't spin. If you want to, you can use a hex key to prevent the stud from spinning and try that. Sometimes that works out. Now we'll tighten that down. Just snug it first. Now we'll torque that to 47 foot-pounds. That's good. Lower the jack. Now just slide the ball joint into the knuckle. Just like that. Then you can put the nut on. And if the stud starts spinning, what you can do is put a pull jack or a jack underneath here and just put some light pressure just to pinch the ball joint to the knuckle, then it won't spin. And if you can get a torque wrench in there, you want to torque that to 52 foot-pounds. Now put the axle nut on. Just lightly tighten it down. Then I'm going to use a pry bar in between two of the lug studs, just to prevent the wheel bearing from turning. Then I'm going to torque this to 134 foot-pounds. Now where the little gap is for the axle, you want to just take a chisel or a punch and just peen it over. Just like that. Doesn't have to be too much, just to prevent the nut from loosening up. And put the wheel on. There. Put the lug bolts in. Get those started. Now I'm going to torque the lug nuts to 110 foot-pounds in a cross pattern to tighten the wheel down evenly. Just go around again, double check. After you're done, you want to top off the transmission fluid because a lot of the fluid drained out. There's a fill plug right here. At this time, if you wanted to do a service, there's a drain plug down here. You want to drain the rest of the fluid out, then put that plug back in. Then you can use an 8mm hex key. Take that top plug out and put in the appropriate amount of fluid until it just starts to dribble out, and then you can close that up. This happens to be a 6-speed manual transmission. If you have an automatic transmission, there may be a different filling method.